All right, so today we're diving into something kind of, well, unnerving. Microplastics in the human brain. You know, those tiny plastic particles, less than 5 millimeters we keep hearing about? They're everywhere. But you've brought research suggesting they're not just out there, they're making their way inside our brains.
Yeah, it's unsettling, to say the least.
Yeah.
Researchers at the University of New Mexico recently discovered something pretty shocking. They found microplastics in every single brain sample.
Every single one. How many are we even talking about?
They analyzed 91 brains, and each one, every single one, contained these microplastics. What's even more concerning, the concentrations were way higher than what we typically see in other organs.
Hold on. So not just present, but they seem to be accumulating in the brain faster than elsewhere in the body.
That's right. We're looking at concentrations 10 to 20 times higher than what we see in the liver and kidneys, for example. And we already knew those organs were susceptible to microplastic accumulation.
Wow. Okay, so that's not great. But it's there, we know that much. What does it mean? What are these microplastics in the brain? What could that do to our health?
That's the million-dollar question. The research is still in its early stages, to be honest. We're really just beginning to grasp what this could mean.
But it can't be good, right? I mean, the brain is kind of important for, well, everything.
No, it's definitely a cause for concern. See, what's really worrying is that these microplastics, they can actually get past the blood-brain barrier.
Wait, the what? Sorry, explain that like I'm 5.
Think of the blood-brain barrier as like a security checkpoint for your brain. It's very selective about what it lets in. So the fact that microplastics are getting through, well, that's a big deal.
So they're basically bypassing our brain's defenses? Not good. What are scientists saying about the risks then, specifically?
So far, studies are pointing to a few worrying possibilities. One is oxidative stress. It's basically like rust forming on your cells. Yeah. An imbalance that can damage them and potentially lead to a whole bunch of problems.
And that can't be good for our brain cells. What else?
Inflammation is another concern. It's like, inflammation is our body's natural response to injury or infection, right? But when it becomes chronic, it can actually start damaging healthy tissue, including in the brain.
So we're talking potential damage at the cellular level. But what about us? I mean, how do these microplastics actually affect, how we think, how we feel?
Well, there have been studies, with mice mainly. Exposure to microplastics, in some cases, it's led to cognitive decline, changes in their behavior. Things that, well, they look similar to dementia, actually.
See, that's what freaks me out a bit, knowing, even if it's just potential, that these tiny things could mess with how we think.
Oh, absolutely. And it's important to remember those are animal studies. Can't directly apply that to humans, but it's definitely something we're looking into.
Okay, good to know someone's on it. What's the scientific community saying then about long-term impact on us?
It's a huge focus of research right now. We need more long-term studies on humans, obviously, to say for sure what the consequences are. But one thing that's got everyone's attention is a potential link between microplastics and neurodegenerative diseases.
Like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Now, I want to be clear. This is still very much an open question. But the concern is there. Could exposure to microplastics, especially over a long time, be a contributing factor to those diseases developing? It's something we have to consider.
Yeah, that's not great, especially since it seems like we're constantly exposed to this stuff, which, honestly, how is that happening? They're in our brains. How are they even getting there?
It's a bit of a mystery, isn't it? A detective story. We've got the microplastics at the crime scene, our brains. Now we got to figure out how they got there. It's not as simple as we eat things, plastics in those things, case closed.
That I wish it were.
It's sneakier than that, unfortunately. Let's take food, right? It's not just the packaging. Microplastics are showing up in the food itself.
Wait, hold on. Seriously, in fruits and vegetables and stuff?
Afraid so. Think about how much plastic is used just in growing food. Greenhouse coverings, irrigation systems. Then you've got the plastic pollution in our water, which ends up in seafood. It all adds up.
Okay, I'm starting to get how this is such a widespread problem, so we're ingesting it through food and water. What about just, like, the air we breathe?
Believe it or not, yeah, we're breathing in microplastics, too. They become airborne in all sorts of ways. The breakdown of larger plastic items, wear and tear on tires, even from washing synthetic fabric.
You're telling me every time I do laundry, it's like a microplastic party in the air. That is not what I wanted to hear.
It's concerning, no doubt. Especially when you think that these airborne microplastics, they can travel really far, end up in places you wouldn't expect.
So we've uncovered some pretty unsettling stuff about these microplastics. That's a lot, honestly. But we can't just give up, right? Got to figure out what we do about it.
I agree, yeah. It's not about giving in. It's about understanding and then finding solutions. And the good news is there are things we can do, both individually and as a society.
Okay, see, now that's what I like to hear. So starting with, like, us right here, right now, what can people do to maybe, like, reduce how much of this stuff we're getting exposed to?
Honestly, one of the biggest impacts you can have is reducing single-use plastics. Every plastic bottle you say no to, every takeout container, every plastic bag, that's a win.
Makes sense. Ditch the plastic water bottle, get a reusable one. At the store, choose stuff with less packaging.
You got it. And don't underestimate those small changes. They add up, especially when everyone's doing them. But it's not just about our own consumption. It's also supporting businesses who are trying to cut back on plastic.
Right, so going for companies that are making sustainable choices, sustainable packaging, researching alternative materials, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And on a larger scale, supporting policies that push for plastic reduction and recycling, it sends a message. Consumers care about this.
Putting our money where our mouths are, basically. Supporting companies that align with all this. But even then, this feels huge GE. Like, we need the big guys to step in, right?
Yeah.
Governments, corporations, all that.
100%. This is a global issue. We need tighter regulations on plastic production, investments in better recycling, a real shift towards a circular economy where plastic is reused, repurposed, not ending up in landfills and, well, us.
A total rethink of how we use plastic, basically, from start to finish.
Exactly. It's a huge EE task, no doubt, but we can't ignore it. The good news is we are seeing some progress. People are more aware, there's more pressure, and businesses and governments are starting to take action.
So there's hope. We're not all doomed to a brain full of plastic.
Not at all. It's complex, but not impossible. More research, collective action, commitment to real solutions. We can turn this around for our planet and for ourselves.
Well, there you have it. We dove deep, learned some unsettling stuff. But I think hopefully it's empowering, too. We know more, we're figuring out what to do, and things are changing. Any final thoughts you want to leave us with?
I think the biggest takeaway is even small changes matter. Every step toward less plastic, more sustainable choices, speaking up about it, it all brings us closer to a solution.
Great advice to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.